guest, James Czerniawski, is a contributor with Young Voices and the Senior Tech and Innovation Policy Analyst at Americans for Prosperity. He's our guest now. We're talking about the Twitter files. Ooh, I want to play the X-Files music to this thing. But what were some of the big discoveries so far?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think that when you're looking at the Twitter files, what you're really seeing is a company that had a lot of internal strife going on when it came to how to handle the Hunter Biden laptop story. And ultimately, they made the wrong call. They decided to go and restrict access to the distribution of that story and sharing that link, even going as far as restricting the ability to send it via direct messages between users, which is something that's usually reserved for really rare cases like trying to prevent spreading child pornography. So it was obviously very extreme measures that were taken. And basically, over the course of the time since that story dropped, you're learning more about what exactly the company officials were thinking behind closed doors. There was a lot of disagreement over whether or not this was actually the right move, whether or not, this is even right. And to his credit, you even had current Representative Rokana from California, who represents Silicon Valley, emailing the company and asking, hey, is this okay? It seems like it's violating First Amendment principles here. And he's no center right fan per se. It's just something that's, it raises a lot of very interesting questions as you're looking at what's going on here with the Twitter files.
I can remember a few years ago, you had a lot of people online talking about shadow banning, and they were being called crazy. And lo and behold, this kind of thing actually was happening. So Twitter was stopping certain things from trending and just stopping things from popping up on the newsfeed?
That was certainly something that we saw getting reported on last night from Barry Weiss, who was covering that portion of the Twitter file drop. And basically what was going on there is that you see that the companies, they have basic trust and safety practices that they employ. What we don't know is why those particular things were attributed to those users. They might have been violating existing rules of the community, and then therefore those certain kinds of tags were slapped on them. In general, what it really runs up to is just that I think what Elon's trying to accomplish here is he's trying to turn the page here with the Twitter files and show what he thinks the company did wrong, so that way he can go and run Twitter in his vision and hopefully turn the page and have something that's better than what it has been in years past.
Joining us on 710 KURV is James Czerniawski, a contributor with Young Voices and the Senior Tech and Innovation Policy Analyst at Americans for Prosperity. Davis Rankin, your question.
Well, yeah, one question I want to get to before we go away is why is this important? But if I understand this right, shadow banning, well, first explain shadow banning. And this has been alleged by conservatives for a long time that Twitter was essentially blocking their access to the Twitterverse. And this seems to bear it out. So what is shadow banning?
Yeah, so shadow banning is basically a term that's used to describe efforts that are taken to reduce the distribution or spread of content from particular individuals. So with respect to this Barry Weiss one that was dropped most recently, you saw little tags that showed, reducing trending, blacklist trending, or something to that effect. And basically, it was deprioritizing that content relative to other content that might have been on the platform at that same time. And that's basically what is coined as, shadow banning, if you will. Again, it's a pretty standard practice if you're looking at trust and safety from the perspective of, you might have people that are continually violating the different terms of service in the community, and you're just trying to put something out there to limit that rather than taking a more excessive action than, let's say, suspending their account or, completely removing it altogether.
What was the name? Was it Barry Weiss?
Yeah, Barry Weiss was the reporter that was covering this. Her and Matt Taibbi are the independent reporters that are trying to cover this Twitter filing right now.
She had worked for the New York Times and left because she said it was hostile for her, and she's conservative. How conservative, I don't know, but enough to where they banned her, I suppose. Zack?
Yeah. She did used to work for the New York Times. Now she's a civilian journalist, if you will. Same with Matt Taibbi. I think that's part of his Elon Musk's broader push is that he wants to support what he calls civilian journalism or citizen journalism. I think was the term he coined. But yeah, so it's getting covered right now by those two people particularly.
James Czerniawski is the Senior Tech and Innovation Policy Analyst at Americans for Prosperity. He's a contributor with Young Voices, our guest on your 956 Drive Home. We're talking about the Twitter files and basically all these revelations that have been happening in the past several days for Twitter and how they've been handling the exchange of ideas and information. And so you had mentioned there were actual conversations behind the scenes as to what they could and could not or should not remove from, I guess, by using the algorithm to put out on the news feed. What were the two extremes on that one, and what conclusions were they coming to?
Well, in the case of the Hunter Biden laptop story, when you're looking at the original Twitter files reporting by Matt Taibbi, that was all centralized upon the discussion was about the Hunter Biden laptop story, and it was basically they decided to take it down under the hacked materials policy. And what was the conversation going on behind closed doors was whether or not you could actually stand behind that decision. How are you messaging that to the public, and why, and what tools do we have that we can employ if this is the decision, and is that actually the right thing to be doing? Again, it was something that there was a lot of internal strife about, and part of the reason why is that when you were Twitter in 2016, you had Russian, certainly some Russian agents were trying to engage in interference. Then in 2017, you had leaked materials and hacked materials that were unleashed on social media during the French presidential election. And because they didn't take the right kinds of actions then, I think that the company on average was just on edge. So it put them in an impossible position because no matter what they were ultimately going to do, no one was going to be happy. And that's exactly what ultimately happened here.
Do you have optimism about the future for social media with all these new philosophical discussions that we're having with it?
Yeah, I try to be optimistic no matter what when it comes to technology. I think that on average, technology has been a great force for good in terms of being a conduit for people to express themselves, not just in the United States, but around the world. So that's a really powerful thing. And I think that while I think there's a lot of good conversations that are happening right now, in the long run, there's plenty to be, positive about when looking at this space. I think that it's very bright future still, all things considered.
I want to ask you about something that happened here in Texas. I know this is a little bit off topic, but this is starting to pick up a little bit of steam where the discussion is about how age limits on social media. Somebody has introduced a bill that's coming up in the I can't remember if this was a national or a Texas thing, but they're talking about 18 years old. That's the cutoff. You have to be 18 years or older to start using social media. Do you think that's going to be something that's just going to be pushed to the side, or do you think that this is something that a discussion that might pick up?
I'm sure that it's going to be a discussion that's going to continue to happen in terms of how to look at protecting children online. I've heard about the bill. I saw it earlier today, but I obviously have not read any legislative text, so I can't really comment on that specific bill. But what I would say as a general point of order is that we have to be very careful about when we're looking to regulate online spaces, even with kids. Kids have certainly had some, issues online, but I think that ultimately there's also a lot of benefits to being online too. So I think that we have to be very cautious about how we're drawing lines here when it comes to looking at protecting children online and making sure, most importantly, that we are empowering parents with the necessary tools at their disposal so that they can make sure that they're providing a safe environment for their kids when they're operating technological devices like an iPhone or something else for that matter.
Very well said, James. Very well said. Thanks a lot for stopping by and breaking it down for us. James Czerniawski, contributor with Young Voices and Senior Tech and Innovation Policy Analyst at Americans for Prosperity.